So President Ronald Reagan announced the Teacher in Space project in August of 1984. This program would honor America's teachers and get students across the country more interested in science and engineering. It's kind of crazy that NASA had to launch a whole PR campaign. I mean, I thought most kids already dream of being an astronaut, but okay, like maybe this is where the idea started. So the application process to become the first teacher in space began, and around 11,000 teachers applied for the program. Officials reviewed the applications, and from there, that number was narrowed down to 10 finalists who were brought to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Now, those 10 teachers were submitted to medical exams, mental and physical tests, and space briefings. I guess there was one teacher who had a total meltdown during a test where they were pushing the limits of like how long they could go without oxygen. I guess the teacher completely panicked, and the NASA techs had to restrain him and like jam an oxygen mask on his face. On July 19th, 1985, after all those intense exams and tests were all said and done, Vice President Bush announced to the world that Christa McAuliffe, a 36-year-old high school social studies teacher from New Hampshire, won the contest. So Christa was headed to space. She's like, "Get in, loser, we're going to Mars." But for Christa, the work was just beginning. NASA gave her a training manual that was literally 1 foot thick, and she had to know it front to back. But once the hard stuff was over, Christa was looking forward to some exciting things that would inspire millions of kids all over the world. Once she and her crew left Earth, the plan was for Christa to give lessons to kids across the country, like broadcast live into their homes directly from space. Even today, that sounds pretty cool, so everyone must have been like pumped in the 80s. They were going to have 2 live teaching sessions from the Challenger as it orbited Earth, and these would be science lessons taught by Christa and broadcast on PBS. Then, when Christa returned from the trip, she would tour the country and give speeches at schools about her experiences on the Challenger. And you know that was going to be like the best assembly of the year, because back in the day, when there was an all-school assembly, it was a real crapshoot. It's either like a cringy Christian couple doing raps about abstinence, or like, "Hey, look, a real-life astronaut." Now, the Teacher in Space project was not the only idea NASA was considering. They were even thinking about bringing celebrities onto the space shuttles so they could get people to care about space again. I guess like so many celebrities wanted to go on this NASA mission. Apparently a total of 42 different network broadcasters applied, including the big newscasters like Tom Brokaw and Walter Cronkite. And here's where Sesame Street enters the picture. They were approached by NASA to participate. Carol Spinney, the legendary puppeteer behind Big Bird, said, quote, "I once got a letter from NASA asking if I would be willing to join a mission to orbit the Earth as Big Bird to encourage kids to get interested in space." End quote. It's not totally clear why Spinney, aka Big Bird, didn't end up going. But Spinney points out that Big Bird is 8 feet, 2 inches tall. And, there's really no way NASA would let one person take up that much space on the rocket. But in 2015, NASA did confirm that there were initial conversations with Sesame Street, but the plan was never approved by the higher-ups, so no Big Bird. But there were other people. Along with Christa, there were 6 other people in the crew for the Challenger mission. The mission was originally planned to take 6 full days, but the launch for the Challenger, it was delayed several times, which happens a lot for NASA and companies like SpaceX today. Wind, crazy temperatures, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons that can keep rockets on the ground. At the very beginning, Challenger was supposed to launch in July of 1985, then it got pushed to January of 1986, and then on January 27th, the crew was already strapped into the shuttle, ready to smash that launch button when a technical issue popped up. The launch was pushed for the last time to the next morning, January 28th, and this is when things start to go sideways. It's almost like something was trying to tell NASA that maybe they shouldn't go through with this mission, but they didn't listen. The night before the launch of the Challenger, it was freezing cold outside, like literally. Temperatures dipped into the low 20s, and by 1:35 a.m., a crew was sent out to inspect the ice forming on the launch pad, because this is one of those things that can force NASA to cancel a launch. So this set off alarm bells for some. A meeting was scheduled to discuss the low temperatures and the kind of problems this would create. But NASA was like, we're good. I mean, everyone was watching this space launch. They couldn't just cancel it. I mean, they could, but they didn't wanna. So by 6:18 a.m. on January 28th, the Challenger crew was awake and eating breakfast. Meanwhile, another ice inspection was completed, and the original liftoff time was delayed so the ice would have a chance to melt. It's like, okay, they're taking precautions. Maybe everything's fine. In the end, despite the cold temperatures and the icy conditions, the skies were clear blue on the day of, and everything seemed perfect for the launch. So they're all buckled in, bleep, blop, bloop, and the countdown began. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff at 11:38 a.m. Christa and her 6 other crew members left Earth's surface and began hurtling towards space. I mean, their wildest dreams are coming true. Thousands of American children in schools all across the country were glued to TV sets, watching it happen live. And of course, adults are watching it too, because tons of news outlets were covering this super historic event. So on Mission Control, it's the place where scientists and engineers help operate the shuttle from the Earth, everyone there was buzzing. They're all excited about what they're witnessing. So people are cheering and crying and just really taking in this incredible moment. Oh my God, there's a teacher going to space. It's incredible. And there had been so much buildup. It finally happened. Well, we're here, so shit did not go right. But then, just 73 seconds after takeoff, pilot Michael J. Smith's voice came over the intercom in the crew cabin. And the very last thing he said was, uh-oh. And then students watched live in their classrooms, and everyone's watching all over the place, all over the country, The Challenger exploded. Oh my God. Everyone watching was horrified. I mean, thinking they just watched the death of 7 people, which they did. NASA ground crew and Mission Control were horrified. Everybody watching was completely shocked as they saw white smoke burst from the rocket. And then the shuttle disappeared from view. The image shown over and over was of a Y-shaped explosion where the shuttle had been. So within just 1 hour of the explosion, 85% of Americans had heard about the disaster. One of the witnesses who watched it unfold on TV was Carol Spinney, Big Bird. He and the Sesame Street crew took a break from filming to watch the Challenger take off. Spinney said, quote, "All of a sudden it goes boom and I said, oh my God." We all started crying. We knew it was a disaster. It made my scalp crawl to think I was supposed to be on that, end quote. I mean, this was tragic, so what the hell went wrong?